Welcome to your own channel, Whispers in Deadlight. New chilling, horror, creepy encounters, ghost stories videos are waiting for you. Please subscribe this channel, so you never miss a moment of the darkness. Now let's begin with story number 1. It was the autumn of 2022 when Matthew found it. The map. The thing that would change everything. He had just turned 26 and had recently moved to a small village in Eastern Europe, an ancient settlement named Rudnov. Nestled between tall pines, the town was isolated, known for its long, cold winters and stories older than the surrounding woods themselves. His parents had died in an accident when he was a child, leaving him to grow up in foster care. As a result, he never had the ties to family that others did. His house, a crumbling relic built during the early 1800s, was the only family he had left. One cold evening, as he rummaged through the attic of his new home, Matthew stumbled upon a dusty, leather-bound book. The pages inside were yellow and brittle with age, but one thing was clear: it was a journal. It seemed to belong to someone named Jonas Krieger, a former resident of Rudnov, and it detailed something strange: an old, hidden forest near the outskirts of the village, a place referred to as Lakai. Flipping through the pages, Matthew found a peculiar map tucked between two pages. It was crude, inked in black, and seemed to outline a large forest area far outside Rudnov. But the forest wasn't just a forest, it was marked as a place of great power, and the map's final line, scrawled in a shaky hand, read, "To find what is hidden, one must face the darkest path. But know this, once you take the first step, you can never return unchanged." Matthew didn't know why, but something inside him urged him to find the forest, to see for himself what it was. Maybe it was the thrill of discovery, or perhaps the isolation he had always felt, but whatever it was, he felt a deep pull toward it. By the time he showed the map to his friends, it was late September. Ivan and Eric, two locals who had become his closest companions in Rudnov, were intrigued by the map but skeptical of its claims. Ivan, the older of the two, had grown up in the village and was steeped in its folklore. Eric, however, was more of a pragmatic person. He believed in science and logic. "This could be just some old tale," Ivan said, flipping the map over, as though expecting something to jump out at him. "The forest of Lakai is more myth than fact, I'd wager." "I don't know," Eric chimed in. "It's hard to dismiss something when there's actual documentation." He paused, his fingers tracing the edges of the map. "But why does the map say you can never return unchanged?" Matthew stared at the words. He hadn't noticed them before, but now they seemed to echo in his mind. Unchanged. What did that mean? Ivan shook his head. "Look, I know there's a lot of strange stuff about this place, but there's nothing magical about it. There's nothing out there but trees and shadows. But if you want to go, fine. I'll come along. But I'm not getting involved in whatever curse this map is talking about." Eric sighed. "Same here. But if you're determined to go, I'll join. I don't believe in ghosts or curses, but I do believe in getting to the bottom of a good mystery." The three of them agreed to head out the next morning. What they didn't know was that they had just sealed their fate. The journey to the edge of Lakai's forest wasn't long, but it felt like a world away from Rudnov. The road, which had once been a well-trodden path, was now barely visible under the thick growth of moss and roots. The trees that lined the path were twisted, gnarled, and dark. Each one seemed to have a life of its own, stretching its branches as though reaching out to claim them. "I don't like this," Ivan muttered, wiping sweat from his brow even though the temperature had dropped. "It's too quiet. You can't even hear birds." Matthew could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. "It's just the forest. It's isolated. That's all." But deep down, he wasn't so sure. There was something suffocating about the silence. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it felt like something was watching. Eric, trying to lighten the mood, cracked a joke. "Maybe we're walking into some kind of supernatural theme park. You know, like Halloween Horror Nights. What's next? A haunted house?" Ivan didn't laugh. "This place is bad news," he said. "We should turn back." But Matthew was too far gone. "Let's go a little further. We'll be fine." The path eventually led them to a clearing, and there, standing before them, was a large stone monument, an altar of sorts. On the altar was a carved inscription, "Welcome to the heart of Lakai." Matthew stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. This is it. Without giving it a second thought, Matthew placed one foot onto the stone altar, followed by Yvonne and Eric, who hesitated but followed. The air seemed to grow heavier with each step they took. The trees seemed to close in around them, and an eerie fog rolled in, swallowing the path they had come from. The only sound now was the soft rustle of leaves beneath their feet. Suddenly, a faint rustling sound came from deep within the forest. Matthew froze. "What was that?" Yvonne whispered. Before anyone could respond, a chilling, unnatural wind blew through the clearing, knocking over branches and causing a low, guttural noise to reverberate through the air. "We need to leave now," Eric urged. But Matthew couldn't move. His eyes were drawn to something ahead, a figure standing in the fog, barely visible. It was a man, but his features were obscured by shadows. And he was staring right at them. As they approached, the fog thickened, and the figure grew more distinct. He was dressed in ragged clothes, his face pale and gaunt. His eyes, sunken and hollow, seemed to pierce right through them. The man spoke in a voice that sounded like it came from the depths of the earth. "You've crossed the threshold." Matthew stepped back, his heart racing. "Who are you?" The figure remained silent for a moment before speaking again. "You were warned. The price of discovery is steep. You cannot leave without changing. What you find here will follow you for the rest of your life." Yvonne, his voice trembling, asked, "What is this place?" The man's lips curled into a twisted smile. "Lakai is where the lost souls reside, where darkness grows." Eric took a step forward, his hand clenched into a fist. "We don't believe in your dark tales. Show us the truth." The figure laughed, a hollow mocking sound that made their blood run cold. "The truth is not something you seek, but something you will endure." The man turned and walked into the fog, disappearing from sight. The three of them stood in stunned silence, the echo of the man's words ringing in their ears. "What does he mean?" Eric asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," Matthew replied, his heart pounding. "But I'm not going back now." The wind howled again, and the fog swirled around them. The air felt thick, like it was pressing against their bodies, suffocating them. That man, was he real? Yvonne asked, his voice shaking. "I don't know," Matthew said, trying to steady his breath. "But I feel like we're not alone here." Eric nodded. "Yeah, we definitely need to leave." But as they turned to retrace their steps, the path they had come from had vanished. In its place was a dense wall of trees. "We're trapped," Matthew murmured. They spent hours wandering through the fog, trying to find their way back. But the trees seemed to shift and change. Every turn they made led them deeper into the forest. Time felt distorted. What had felt like minutes now seemed like hours. "Nothing makes sense here," Yvonne muttered. "We're going in circles." Then, without warning, they stumbled upon another clearing. But this one was different. In the center of the clearing was a stone structure, something ancient and weathered. And on top of it lay the same map Matthew had found earlier. It was as if the forest had given them a choice, to keep going or to stop. Matthew reached out and picked up the map, his fingers trembling. But something was wrong. As soon as he touched it, he felt a sharp pain in his chest, like a cold, icy hand had gripped his heart. "Do you feel that?" Eric asked, his face pale. I feel it too," Matthew whispered. "We need to put this back. We can't take it." But Yvonne, his eyes wide with fear, shook his head. "It's too late. We're already in too deep. Whatever happens now, we have to see it through." Matthew's hand tightened around the map, feeling the weight of it pulling him in, the inked lines on the page twisting in ways they shouldn't have been. It was like the map itself was alive, pulsating with some unseen energy. "No," Eric said, his voice breaking the heavy silence. "We have to go back. This map, it's not just a guide. It's a curse." Matthew stared at the map for a moment longer, his mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. But then he felt it, the chilling sensation of something shifting behind him. He turned swiftly, but there was nothing. Just the dense fog and the silent forest. "Put the map back," Eric urged again, his voice trembling now. "We need to leave right now." But Matthew was already taking a step forward. He couldn't stop himself. The pull of the map was too strong, too undeniable. Yvonne and Eric both stared at him, unable to hide the terror in their eyes. They knew what was coming. As soon as Matthew started walking toward the stone altar, he felt the air grow colder. His breath came out in misty puffs, and the shadows around them seemed to deepen. Suddenly, the figure appeared again, the same man, his hollow eyes glowing in the fog. His mouth curled into that same twisted smile. "You can't escape it now," he rasped. "Once you choose the path, it is the path you must follow. Stop. We want nothing to do with this." Yvonne shouted, his voice breaking. "Take the map back. We were just curious, we didn't mean to." But the figure only raised his hand, silencing him. Curiosity has a price, and the cost is always more than you can pay. Matthew stepped forward, the map in his hand, but the man didn't seem to move. The fog swirled faster around them, and suddenly, the ground beneath Matthew's feet felt soft and spongy. He stopped, feeling the earth shift, and looked down to see the ground crack open, as if the earth itself was preparing to swallow him whole. "What is this?" Eric whispered. "An invitation," the figure answered, his voice barely audible above the howl of the wind. "A choice. Choose wisely." Matthew's heart pounded. He didn't know what to do. His hand, still clutching the map, trembled. The man's words echoed in his mind. "The price is always more than you can pay." "Put it back," Yvonne pleaded. "We can't let this destroy us." But it was too late. As Matthew slowly lifted the map toward the stone altar, he felt the ground shift beneath him. The fog grew thicker, and strange whispers filled the air, whispers that seemed to come from every direction. The whispers were soft at first, like the faint rustling of paper, but they grew louder, more insistent, as though the entire forest was trying to tell him something. "Matthew," Eric's voice cracked. "Stop." But Matthew couldn't. The map had a grip on him now, one that he couldn't explain. His mind was clouded with a feeling of dread, but also fascination. The urge to understand, to know, overwhelmed him. He placed the map on the altar, and as soon as it touched the stone, a violent tremor shook the ground. The whispers crescendoed into a roar. The fog thickened, swirling around them like a living thing. A dark shadow seemed to rise from the earth, wrapping around Matthew's feet like tendrils. His vision blurred, and for a moment, the world around him became a haze. He felt a sharp pain in his chest again, this time worse than before. It was as if something inside him was being torn apart. "No!" Yvonne screamed, but it was too late. Matthew's body lurched forward as the shadow enveloped him. His mouth opened in a silent scream, but no sound came out. His eyes were wide with terror as the shadow seemed to consume him. His skin turned pale and cracked, his body twisting unnaturally as though something within him was fighting to escape. Yvonne and Eric tried to reach him, but the shadow held them back, pushing them to the ground. Matthew's form jerked violently, his body convulsing as though the very life was being drained from him. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. Matthew stood motionless, his eyes now hollow and black, staring out into nothingness. Matthew's face was a mask of horror as he slowly turned to face his friends. His eyes were empty, like two black voids, devoid of life. Yvonne and Eric stumbled backward in terror, their hearts pounding in their chests. "What happened to him?" Eric whispered, his voice barely audible. Yvonne could barely speak. "He's not the same. Whatever this place is, it's changed him." Matthew's lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, with a jerky motion, he pointed toward the stone altar and then back toward the fog, as though urging them to follow him. "Let's leave," Eric begged. "Please, let's leave now." But the forest seemed to close in around them, the path behind them vanishing as the fog thickened. There was no escape. Not anymore. With a final, desperate glance at Matthew, Yvonne and Eric reluctantly followed him deeper into the fog. The air grew colder, their footsteps slower, and their hearts heavier with each passing second. It wasn't until they reached the stone monument again that they realized they had been walking in circles. The path had disappeared. The map, now lying on the altar, was a reminder of the choice they had made. Suddenly, the fog parted, and they found themselves standing in a clearing. The forest had let them go. They were back at the edge of Lakai, where they had started. But something was different. Matthew, his eyes still empty, turned to face his friends. His voice was a low whisper, cold and unfeeling. "Leave," he said. "Go back." Yvonne and Eric didn't hesitate. They turned and ran. They didn't look back. They didn't have to. As they reached the edge of the village, they looked up to find the sky was darker than they remembered. The stars seemed to shimmer with a cold light, distant and unreachable. And behind them, the forest of Lakai stood silent, watching. They didn't speak for days. The weight of what had happened hung over them, suffocating them. And as for Matthew, they never saw him again. He was gone. A part of the forest. A part of the darkness. And the map. It was gone too. Lost to the shadows. But they knew this. Whatever it was they had uncovered in Lakai, it had followed them. They could never escape it. Never. It was the winter of 2021 when I, Edward, found myself facing the chilling unknown. I lived in a small, secluded village tucked deep within the mountains. It was the kind of place where people whispered, where strange things were often left unsaid. Near our village stood the Black Wood, an ancient forest that had cast a shadow over our lives for as long as we could remember. No one dared to go near it. There were stories. Too many stories. And the villagers always spoke of the Black Wood with fear, as if the forest itself could hear their words. Charles and Henry, my two best friends, and I had often heard the same rumors. People said that once you entered the forest, you might never return. They told tales of people vanishing into its depths, never to be seen again. But as we listened, something inside us stirred, a mix of curiosity and defiance. And the more we heard, the more intrigued we became. One evening, we decided we'd had enough of the stories. We had to know the truth. We decided to venture into the Black Wood. The night we chose was colder than usual. The wind howled through the trees, and the moon was little more than a faint sliver in the sky. But we were determined. "We'll go in," Charles said, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "And we'll make it out." But I could tell he was just as scared as I was. I swallowed hard, trying to shake the feeling that this was a mistake. We stood at the edge of the Black Wood, staring into the dark abyss of trees that stretched endlessly before us. The village lights were far behind us now, dimming into the distance. The forest seemed to breathe, an almost unnatural stillness hanging in the air. "Are you sure about this?" Henry asked, his voice low, almost unsure. "We've come this far," I said, my voice barely audible. "We can't turn back now." As we crossed the threshold into the forest, the air grew colder. The trees stood like silent giants, their branches twisted into unnatural shapes. The path was narrow, barely wide enough for us to walk side by side. The further we went, the darker it became. The wind seemed to stop, as if the forest itself had swallowed it up. It felt wrong, unnatural. Charles led the way, his footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The only sound was the faint rustle of leaves beneath our feet. "It's too quiet," Henry whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't like this." But we kept moving. The forest seemed to stretch on forever. Every step felt heavier than the last. We walked for what felt like hours, the trees closing in around us. We barely spoke. We didn't need to. The silence was all-consuming. Then, we came across something that froze me in my tracks. An old stone archway. The moss-covered stones were barely visible in the shadows. But it was there, marking the entrance to something deeper, darker. Beneath the arch, a stone door stood, carved with strange symbols. "This is it," I whispered. "This has to be the way." We gathered our courage and pushed the door open. The air inside was colder than anything we had felt outside. It was as if we had entered a different world altogether. The door creaked as we stepped into a small clearing. In the center stood an ancient tree. It was unlike any tree I had ever seen. Its bark was blackened, twisted, and gnarled, stretching out like fingers reaching for the sky. The roots were thick and knotted, burrowing deep into the earth. It seemed to loom over us, casting a long, dark shadow across the clearing. "This place, it feels wrong," Henry muttered, stepping back. But Charles was already moving toward the tree. "Look at this," he said, kneeling down. Beneath the tree was a wooden chest, half buried in the dirt. We watched in silence as Charles carefully opened the chest. Inside was a yellowed piece of parchment, wrapped around something. He unrolled it slowly, revealing an old, faded map. The ink was nearly gone, but the shapes and symbols on it were still clear. "What is this?" Henry asked, leaning in to get a closer look. "It's a map of the forest," Charles said, his voice filled with awe. "But there's something else. There are other places on it, too. Places we've never heard of." I took the map from Charles, feeling a sudden, inexplicable shiver run down my spine. "It's a guide," I said. "A guide to the secrets of the Black Wood." Just then, the wind picked up, and a strange sound echoed through the clearing, an unnatural laugh, hollow and cold. We froze. The laugh came again, louder this time. It echoed through the trees, bouncing off the trunks and branches, as if it were coming from everywhere at once. My heart hammered in my chest. "It's just the wind," Charles said quickly, but his voice was shaking. He glanced nervously at the dark trees. I wasn't so sure. The laugh wasn't natural. It felt like something was watching us, something that knew we were here. A rustling sound came from deeper in the forest, louder this time, like something large moving through the underbrush. I turned toward the noise, but saw nothing. The darkness seemed to shift, to move in ways it shouldn't. "Let's go," I said, my voice tight. I turned to head back the way we came, but as I did, I noticed something chilling. The path we had followed was no longer there. The trees had shifted. The path was gone. The forest seemed to have swallowed it whole. The map in my hands was useless now. The markings on it made no sense. "Where's the way out?" Henry asked, his voice growing frantic. "I don't know," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. "We're trapped." The trees groaned and creaked around us, as if the forest was alive. The wind howled through the branches, but there was something wrong with it, something unsettling. A shadow moved in the distance, darting between the trees. "What was that?" Charles whispered. The shadow moved again, closer this time. Something large, something fast. Suddenly, the laughter returned. It was louder now, mocking us. The trees seemed to close in around us, their branches reaching out like fingers. A shape emerged from the darkness, tall, thin, and impossibly fast. It moved with an unnatural grace, gliding through the trees as if it were part of the night itself. Its eyes glowed faintly, a sickly yellow that burned through the darkness. The figure stopped at the edge of the clearing, staring at us. We couldn't move. We couldn't breathe. And then it spoke, its voice a low hiss that sent chills crawling up my spine. "You shouldn't have come." We backed away, but the figure stepped forward, blocking our path. "We need to leave," I whispered, barely able to speak. But the figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching us, its glowing eyes never leaving us for a second. Without warning, we turned and ran. We ran as fast as we could, but the trees seemed to shift again, making the path twist and turn, never leading us anywhere. The laughter filled the air, louder and more mocking than ever. "Don't look back," Charles shouted. But I couldn't help it. I had to look. And when I did, the figure was gone. But the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. We ran harder, our lungs burning, our hearts racing. The trees were closing in, their branches reaching for us like claws. We didn't know how long we had been running, but eventually, the darkness began to recede. The trees seemed to thin out, and the oppressive weight of the forest lifted. We stumbled into a clearing, gasping for breath. Charles collapsed to the ground. What was that thing? Henry was too scared to speak. His eyes were wide with fear, his face pale. "I don't know," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "But I don't think we've escaped." We made it to the edge of the black wood. The moonlight flooded the area, and for the first time that night, we felt a sense of relief. The forest was behind us. But when we looked back, it was silent, still, as though nothing had ever happened. Charles stood up, still shaking. "That was real, wasn't it?" I nodded. "It was real. And it's not over." We didn't speak much after that. We left the blackwood behind us, but the memory of what we saw stayed with us. The laughter, the figure, the way the trees moved on their own, it haunted us. The blackwood wasn't just a forest. It was alive. It had claimed us, just as it had claimed so many others before. As we walked back toward the village, the wind began to pick up again, sending chills through our bones. The trees in the distance swayed ominously, their branches creaking like old bones. Even though we had escaped, it felt like the forest was still watching us, waiting for the right moment to strike. None of us spoke for the rest of the way back. We didn't need to. We all knew what we had experienced was beyond our understanding, beyond any explanation. The blackwood wasn't just a forest. It was something older, something far darker than anything we could ever comprehend. When we reached the edge of the village, I turned around for one last glance. The blackwood stood there, silent and still. But I could feel it. The forest wasn't done with us. It was still out there, waiting for the next soul brave, or foolish, enough to wander into its grasp. "We shouldn't talk about this," Henry said quietly, breaking the silence. "I agree," Charles added, his voice shaking. "It's best if we never speak of it again." We all nodded in agreement. We'd made a silent vow to never return to the blackwood, to never go near it again. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be so easy. The forest had claimed us, whether we wanted it to or not. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if the forest was still there, lurking just beyond the edge of the village, waiting for the next time we would stray too close. And sometimes, when the wind howls through the trees, I swear I can still hear that laugh. That mocking, hollow sound that filled the forest, echoing through the night. I know it's still out there. The blackwood waits, and it claims all who dare to challenge its dark secrets. As I closed my eyes, the last thing I heard was the wind, whispering through the trees. It was almost like a warning. A promise that the blackwood would never forget. My name is Lucas, and I'll never forget the night that changed everything. I grew up in a small, sleepy village nestled in the mountains of Austria, where everyone knew everyone else, and the air always smelled of pine and earth. But there was one place, one terrifying place, that nobody in our village ever spoke about openly. It was called the Deep Forest, and even the bravest men in our village feared it. The stories were always whispered in hushed tones, as though speaking too loudly would summon something. They said that anyone who ventured into the forest never came back the same. Some went in and disappeared without a trace. Others returned, but their minds were shattered. They would speak of strange noises, shadows that moved of their own accord, and voices that called their names even when no one was around. I had heard the stories since I was a child, but as I grew older, my curiosity grew stronger. I wanted to know what was so dangerous about this forest. Why did it claim people? What was the truth behind the rumors? I had two close friends, Emile and Victor, both of whom had grown up with me. We had spent our childhood exploring every nook and cranny of the village, but the deep forest always stood like an unspoken boundary we dared not cross. One evening, after a few too many beers at the local tavern, we found ourselves staring at the forest from the safety of the village's edge. The full moon was high in the sky, casting a cold, silvery light across the dark tree-line. "We've talked about this for years," Emile said, his voice thick with alcohol. "Why don't we just go in? Let's see what's really out there." Victor looked uneasy, but he didn't speak against it. We were young, and the idea of uncovering the mystery of the deep forest had always been an unspoken temptation for the three of us. "Are we really going to do this?" I asked, my heart racing with excitement and fear. "Why not?" Emile grinned. "It's not like we're going to get lost. We're smarter than that." We didn't know it then, but that night would be the last time we'd speak of the forest in a casual way. The night air was crisp, biting at our skin as we made our way toward the deep forest. The village was quiet behind us, the lights from the homes flickering like distant stars in the dark. The path leading into the forest was narrow, flanked by tall grass and overgrown vines. As we stepped into the shadow of the trees, the temperature seemed to drop immediately. The familiar sounds of the village disappeared, replaced by the eerie silence of the woods. "Have you guys ever noticed how quiet it is here?" Victor whispered, his voice barely audible. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The trees seemed to loom higher than I remembered, their branches stretching like skeletal fingers above us, blocking out most of the moonlight. "This place is messed up," Emile muttered, his bravado slipping a little. "I mean, look at all the shadows. I'm not sure I want to keep going." But I couldn't turn back now. I had to see this through. We walked in silence for what felt like hours, the only sound being the crunch of leaves beneath our boots. The deeper we went, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. The trees began to feel closer, their twisted roots and gnarled branches bending inward as if trying to trap us. Finally, we reached a clearing, and there, in the center, stood the tree. It was massive, twisted and blackened, its roots like claws that reached deep into the earth. Its bark was rough and uneven, and its leaves hung like tattered rags. "That's it," Victor whispered. "The tree of forgotten memories." We had heard the stories, of course. They said the tree was ancient, older than the village itself. It had been the site of old rituals long before our time, rituals that no one dared speak of. The legends said that whoever uncovered its secrets would be cursed forever. But curiosity got the better of us. Under the tree, partially buried in the dirt, was a large wooden chest. It was old, covered in moss, and worn by time. Emile knelt down first, his hands trembling as he brushed the dirt away from the chest. "Look at this," he muttered. "It's like it's been here forever." "I don't know, man," Victor said, his voice tight. "This is starting to feel wrong. Maybe we should leave." But Emile didn't listen. He wiped the chest clean and opened it. Inside, wrapped in yellowed parchment, was a map. The ink was faded, but the markings were still visible. It depicted the forest, with winding paths and strange symbols I didn't recognize. "This map, it's not just of the forest," I said, my voice shaking. "It shows other places, places we've never heard of." Victor took a step back, fear creeping into his eyes. "We shouldn't be here. This map, whatever it is, it's not for us." But before we could discuss it further, a laugh echoed through the trees. It was sharp, high-pitched, and completely unnatural. It sent a chill down my spine. "It's just the wind," Emile said, but even he didn't sound convincing. The trees groaned, their branches creaking in the wind, and for a moment, the forest felt alive, alive in a way that wasn't natural. We froze, looking around, but there was nothing. No one. But the laughter, it wouldn't stop. It echoed through the trees, bouncing off the trunks and swirling around us. It sounded like it was coming from all directions. "That's not the wind," Victor said, his voice low, almost a whisper. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a cold sweat breaking out across my forehead. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaky. There was no answer. Just that haunting laugh. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw something move, a shadow, just beyond the tree line. It was tall, dark, and seemed to move faster than it should have. My stomach dropped. "We need to leave," I said, my voice shaking. But as we turned to leave, something changed. The path we had come in on was gone. The trees, once spaced apart, had shifted, and now they blocked the way out. "We're trapped," Emil said, his voice breaking. "What the hell is going on?" The laughter grew louder. It was no longer just laughter. It was mocking, like the forest itself was toying with us. We stood there, panicked, looking for a way out, but the forest seemed to close in around us. The trees creaked and groaned as though alive, twisting and bending to prevent our escape. And then, from the shadows, something stepped into the clearing. It was tall, its body cloaked in darkness. Its eyes glowed, faintly at first, but then more intensely, until they were like two burning coals staring right through us. It moved quickly, with an unnatural speed, and in an instant, it was right in front of us. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it spoke in a voice that sounded like it was coming from the trees themselves. "The deep forest claims all who enter," it hissed. "Your fates are sealed." Without thinking, we ran. We ran through the trees, our breath coming in sharp gasps, our hearts pounding in our chests. The laughter followed us, mocking us. The forest felt alive, like the trees themselves were reaching for us, trying to grab hold of us. We didn't know which way we were going, just that we had to keep running. The branches whipped at our faces, and the wind howled in our ears, but still, the laughter followed. It was all around us, bouncing off the trees, getting louder and louder. "Don't stop," Emil shouted, but we were all running on pure instinct now. We ran for what felt like hours. But no matter how fast we ran, we couldn't escape. The trees seemed to close in around us, their trunks becoming thicker, their branches more twisted. And then, when I thought we couldn't run any further, we found ourselves back in the clearing. The tree of forgotten memories stood in the center, as though it had never moved. The chest was gone. The map, the last thing we had found, was nowhere to be seen. "This doesn't make sense," Victor panted, his face pale. "We've been running in circles. It's like the forest is changing around us." Emil didn't speak. His eyes were wide with terror as he looked around. "Where are we?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. But the only answer was the laughter. Louder than before. "We have to leave. Now," I said, panic rising in my chest. But as we turned, the trees shifted once again. The path was gone. There was no way out. "This is it," Emil whispered. "We're never getting out." And then, from behind us, the figure appeared once more. It was standing in the shadows, its glowing eyes fixed on us. Its form was shifting, changing, as if it was made of darkness itself. "You can't leave," the figure hissed. "Not now. Not ever." We turned, and for the first time, the forest was silent. "You've made your choice," the figure said, its voice no longer a whisper but a low growl. I tried to move, but my feet were rooted to the ground. It felt as though the earth itself was holding me in place. "This is where it ends," the figure continued. "The deep forest has claimed you." The figure moved closer, its glowing eyes now burning with an unnatural intensity, piercing through the darkness. Its form was no longer just a shadow, it was a twisted, dark presence that seemed to warp reality itself. It stood tall, almost too tall, towering over us with a form that was neither human nor beast. The edges of its body seemed to blur, like smoke curling in the night air. I felt as though I was drowning in its gaze, my body frozen in place, unable to move. Every instinct told me to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. Fear gripped me, a cold, icy grip that paralyzed me from the inside out. "You've made your choice," the figure spoke again, its voice like a low growl that vibrated through my bones. There was no emotion in its tone, just an eerie calmness, as if this was all part of its plan. "You've come too far to leave now. You've entered the deep forest, and it does not let go of its prey." I tried to speak, tried to shout, but my voice was strangled in my throat. I could feel the weight of the forest pressing down on me, as though the very trees themselves were holding me captive. The wind had stopped completely, and all I could hear was the distant sound of that haunting laugh, echoing from the depths of the woods. Victor's voice broke through the silence. "Please, we didn't mean any harm. We didn't know. We didn't understand." The figure didn't respond. It stepped forward, its presence filling the air with an overwhelming sense of dread. It reached out, its hands long and bony, with fingers that seemed to stretch and bend in unnatural ways. I thought I could feel the air thickening, suffocating me, as if the very atmosphere was pulling us deeper into the forest. My vision blurred, the edges of the world warping, and I could feel something pulling at the corners of my mind. The map, the chest, the tree. Everything we had seen before was slipping away from me, becoming distant and unreal, as if it was never meant to be understood. Then, without warning, the figure lunged. I gasped, my body jerking in an involuntary movement, but I was too slow. It was too quick, and before I could react, I felt its icy grip around my neck. My breath caught in my throat as I struggled to pull free, but its hold was unrelenting. The world around me spun as the darkness closed in, and I realized, with a sickening clarity, that we weren't just trapped in the forest, we were being pulled into it. Into something far older, far darker than I could have ever imagined. And then, there was a sound, a sharp snap, like a twig breaking. But it wasn't the sound of a branch. It was the sound of something snapping inside me, breaking apart, as if I were being pulled apart, body and soul. Everything went black. I awoke with a start. My body ached, every inch of me screaming with pain, but there was no sign of the figure, no glowing eyes, no presence looming over me. I was lying on the ground at the edge of the village, where the forest met the open fields. The air was still, cold and quiet. There was no laughter now, no mocking voice, just silence. I blinked, disoriented. My breath was shallow, and I could feel the cold night air on my skin. The familiar, peaceful sounds of the village were missing. No dogs barking, no wind rustling through the trees. Just an oppressive, unnatural stillness. I pushed myself up, my hands trembling, my heart still racing in my chest. The ground beneath me felt strange, almost unreal, like I wasn't really standing on solid earth. The path leading into the forest was gone, swallowed up by the trees. The moon hung high in the sky, its pale light casting long, eerie shadows across the landscape. I looked around, desperate for some sign of Victor and Emile, but there was nothing. No sign of them. No trace of their presence. It was as if they had never been with me at all. The darkness of the forest stood behind me, silent and unmoving, but I could feel it. I could feel its eyes on me, watching, waiting. The trees seemed to stretch farther into the distance now, their gnarled branches twisting like fingers reaching out from the shadows. "Victor? Emile?" I called, my voice hoarse, but there was no response. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I realized the truth. I was alone. Completely alone. But as I stood there, staring into the depths of the forest, I could feel something stirring within it. A presence. It was subtle at first, like a whisper on the wind. But it grew louder, more distinct, like a faint heartbeat echoing through the trees. I turned, slowly, my body frozen with dread. And there, standing at the very edge of the forest, I saw it. The figure. It was watching me, standing perfectly still, its glowing eyes fixed on me from the darkness. Its form was darker than the night itself, its edges blurry, as if it wasn't entirely part of this world. And even though I knew it wasn't really there, my heart lurched in my chest, and a wave of terror washed over me. I ran. I ran without thinking, my legs pumping furiously as I tore through the empty streets of the village. The houses seemed to loom over me, their windows dark, the streets eerily deserted. But it didn't matter. I needed to escape. I needed to get away from the forest, from that thing. I don't know how long I ran. Time seemed to lose all meaning as I sprinted through the village and beyond, never looking back, never daring to stop. But eventually, I stumbled to a halt, out of breath, my chest heaving with exhaustion. I was standing in the middle of an open field, far from the village, and yet I could still feel the weight of the forest behind me, its presence pressing down on me from afar. The air was thick with a strange, unsettling silence. No wind, no sound. Just an oppressive stillness that clung to everything around me. And then I realized. I wasn't free. The laughter. It was faint at first, just a whisper on the wind, but it grew louder. Closer. It echoed from the trees behind me, and I could feel it crawling under my skin. It wasn't just the forest that had claimed me. It was something deeper, something older, something that would never let me go. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, and I saw it again. The figure. It was standing at the edge of the forest, watching me. It didn't move, but I could feel its eyes boring into me. And as I stood there, paralyzed with fear, I knew with a sickening certainty that it would never leave me. The forest was still there, waiting. And it would wait forever. For me. For anyone who dared to